Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with my long overdue next episode in my Great Read series. The series where I take a look back at great stories, novels, books, whatever of old, and kind of tell everyone why I like them so much and why I recommend them so highly. So today's selection comes from all the way back in 1966, kind of a semi-golden oldie. And this is literally a book I have read the cover off of, and not just the cover, both covers. I'm talking about none other 1966's Tai-Pan by James Clavell. Front and back. I refuse to get a new copy because this one's so well thumbed, but I got pages ripped out of here and everything, and some interesting stories to go along with this book. But let me first start off by saying how much I love this book and why. So first off, this is basically the second book in the Asian saga by James Clavell, and mostly it has dealings with big trading companies. Actually, the Struans and Brock and all that, Brock and Sons, is actually labeled after like Jardine Matheson, right? Huge tea opium traders. It's a very deep and fascinating tale in real life. Sometimes fiction is stranger than the fact. What with the trading of opium for tea and all that fascinating stuff. But basically, this series has a lot to do with the ending of the feudal portions of Japan, how trade helped that along, and the trading companies that did so. So most of these stories take place in either Japan or China. Tai-Pan is basically showing how it all got started, basically with Dirk Struan starting up his trading company and becoming the largest trader in the East, right? So he was the one smuggling opium to China and trading it for tea, because all the Chinese would trade for was silver bullion before. And what happened was there was a gigantic tea trade imbalance. Basically, the coffers of England were wiped out because of the insatiable love for tea that only came out of China at the time. And all the Chinese would take was silver. So basically, they were just exporting something they could grow ad nauseum, I mean, more than they could ever hope to use, and only taking hard currency in return. And after like 100 years, this has completely wiped out the coffers in England. So something else had to be remedied. And since at the time, England was in control of like Bengal and India and all, they had access to poppy fields and opium fields, basically, and China had an insatiable need, or not so much need, but a desire for opium. There were so many people there, and it was like the drug of choice, whatever you want to say about all that. So a plan was drawn up, basically, to trade opium directly for tea, and thus eliminating the whole silver thing. And since there was far more Chinese people who were smoking opium than English people, period, in the whole country, soon things leveled off, and then actually started to favor England and the trading companies. The others, there was Americans there too, and Prussians and all that. But anyway, it's a history lesson for another video, perhaps. But this story hinges upon that, and it hinges mostly upon the progenitor of the Struan noble house. The noble house is the biggest trading company, once again labeled after Jardine Matheson of old, and it's an amazing tale of deceit, intrigue, global politics, local politics, the clash of different cultures between, most of the time, Western culture and Eastern culture, and how one man kind of navigates through all of it. Dirk is an incredibly resourceful man. He's also a killer. He's a sailor. He's a captain. He's got a lot going for him. Plus, he's just a shrewd businessman, right? And but back then, much like the first season of Star Trek, they kind of flew by the skin of their teeth out there. They were their own law out there. So, instances of piracy happen, and it's just an amazingly rich and detailed story. The main competitor for Struans is Tyler Brock, and he runs the second largest trading company, Brock and Sons. And those two, there's a lot of enmity between the two. They hate each other. They always have. Brock is older. Brock used to abuse Struan when he was aboard a ship, when he was very young and all that. And so they're heated rivals, but Struan usually comes out on top. And basically, I'm not going to ruin the whole plot for you, but basically, back in England, Tyler's son buys out a lot of the debt of Struan's, because they're all on credit over there in the Orient, and basically makes a run on Struan's, basically forcing him to pay all of his debts off in like 30 days, and if he doesn't, they're going to take over the company. So from there, it becomes a race to see if Struan can get the millions of dollars he needs to pay this off, or he loses everything, right? So, but that's just one of the plots going on there. You have Dirk dealing with Chinese officials, Chinese pirates. You got dastardly and crooked local officials on the English side of things, and he deals with the Portuguese, Catholic Church, and it's just it runs the gamut of different political intrigues and different machinations, right? So, all that being said, it's just, I find it a stunning tale, and it's so rich and deep. And what sets this book apart from many is I can smell the teak wood of the cabins of some of these ships, of the nicer ships, right? I can smell the salt air as they're upon deck. I can see Dirk very clearly in my mind. I can see his mistress Maymay. I can see his son Cullum. I can see them all vividly in my mind, and actually James doesn't actually spend too much time describing these characters, right? Dirk is a giant of a man, but you don't get much else out of him, red sandy hair and all, and that's it. But it leaves it to your imagination to fill in the blanks, and I've read this book so many times that my blanks are all filled, so it's an amazing thing, and I just can't recommend this book enough. It has a whiz-bang ending, and of course it segues into many other books in the series, even though this technically wasn't the second. I think it was either the second or third book written. I know in the timeline this is like the second in the series. It's hard to tell. It's a little bit difficult to go look up the exact numbers, but basically it's a big piece into an overarching saga, and it's not to be missed. But this book can be read just fine without having to read any of the other books in the Asian saga, right? So just go do it. The funny story that I have behind this, if it's so much funny, is I was actually at stationed at Fort Bragg, and I think 2006 is when I first read this book. And they were having, of all things, like a book fair in like the processing center. So it was like, 6, maybe 7 tables of used book dealers were just there. And I was just, browsing through there for something to read. And the book caught my eye because of the title. See, for those of you, especially the ones who've been with the channel for a long time, know that I love venomous snakes. It's like one of my favorite things is learning about and being around venomous snakes. I love it. I've interviewed lots of guys who sole livelihood is based upon the production of snake venom, right? Fascinating people. I have if you want to see those interviews, by the way, those are the Legends of Venom playlist that I have on the channel. But anyway, so I saw the book and I thought, okay, this has to deal with something with snakes for whatever reason, So I was curious. It's like a 50-cent book, whatever. I turned it over and I'm reading the back. I'm like, sailing ships, traders. What's this all about? No, I'm not really interested in that. I put the book back down, right? So I'm browsing through, and I don't think I even found anything else I wanted on that table. And the person behind the table come up and says, "Well, can I help you for anything?" I said, I don't know. I was just looking around for something familiar, and I didn't see anything. So just doing random chit chat. She says, "Well, you know what? If you want a suggestion, I have a book that I think you'd really like." And he hadn't been looking at me before, and he picks this book up and he hands it to me. He says, "This book is just incredible. You should really read this sometime." And I did, and I've never regretted it since then. And I've probably read this book 20 times. I love to reread books. I can't help it. And it segues into another funny, if maybe drawn out story. I'll make it quick. For a long time, I was a driver for superior officers. Like for a while, I was the colonel's driver in our section, right? So I spent a lot of time in Humvees sitting there and taxiing him around. Well, one day, I always usually brought a book with me so I could read. Well, one day I brought this with me, and I had it in the center console area, right? And the colonel rides in the back. And he come back out of his meetings or whatever that day, and he looked up there, and he says, "Oh, so you're reading Tai-Pan, huh?" He says, I said, "Yeah, yes, sir." He says, "That's one of my favorite books of all time." He started going into the whole Asian saga of how he read everything, and then he was telling me, because I hadn't read any of the other books, and he was telling me what happens afterwards somewhat, and the course that the other books take. But it was just a nice little segue, too, into not so much currying favor, but being on really good terms with a superior officer. Here I was, Private Wyatt, talking with Colonel, I'm not going to say his name, Fulbert, Colonel less, just chewing the fat like two guys in a coffee shop. So it was a great little thing, and this book just never ceases to enthrall me on the first or 10th reading. It's just an amazing piece of work, and I can't recommend it enough. So anyway, let's go ahead and wrap that up now. By the way, I hope you've been enjoying the sounds of Chopin in the background. I felt like a kind of a Chopin thing, right? So, but more on that later, because I had another idea for a series. Me, always taking over a series. But yep, so that is my recommended read for, I guess, this month, and that is Tai-Pan by James Clavell. Amazing story about Dirk Struan, Tyler Brock, Colm Struan, and etc., etc., etc. It is a book not to be missed, and reach out and find it anywhere. And I believe it has a movie adaptation too, which I've never seen. I should probably check it out sometime. But it is what it is. I'm sure the movie won't do it justice. But whatever the case may be, get out there and read that if you are so inclined to read novels. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Finger back over here. Stay tuned for more review content coming up in the near future, because if I can review it, I will do it. All right, well, until next time, this is Genome. Just wishing he had a book with 2 covers. Out.